Hello and welcome to Breaking Geek Radio, the podcast, the premier flagship and international podcast of LRM Online and the Genreverse Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brandon Jones, and on this week's episode, it's just myself, Brandon Jones. And what I thought would be fun to do is have a conversation with you all about probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. The other lads are out this week, and so I'm just going to hijack the show because why not? 2023 has been a pretty good year to be a Babylon 5 fan. Yes, we're still waiting to find out what's going to happen with the reboot series. The update that we did get at the beginning of July was the fact that because of the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike that's happening right now, we're probably not going to get any further updates until that gets resolved. And, it's unfortunate. That said, we do know that The Road Home, the animated Babylon feature, is going to be dropping on 15 August. And we just had an announcement this week that the entirety of the Babylon 5 series will be coming to Blu-ray in December. So what I did notice about that announcement that was interesting about the series coming to Blu-ray was the fact that while The Gathering, the pilot, which we've covered on this podcast and reviewed for you all, is going to be included in that, I didn't see that the other movies were. And that made me a little bit nostalgic, and it made me want to go back and watch In the Beginning, which we'll get to that in a minute, but I truly enjoyed. There are several made-for-television Babylon 5 films that came out between 1998 and 2007. These 6 films really did a good job of adding to the lore and the scope and scale of this space epic. And so with the rest of the lads out this week, I thought it'd be a good time to go back to In the Beginning. So while In the Beginning has no critic score, it does have an audience score of 89%, which is only slightly below the series score of a 93. And that is with 2,500 reviews for In the Beginning. This film also boasts a 7.7 on IMDb, and that's out of 10. And it was also nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Special Visual Effects, which we'll get to in a little bit. That'll be a fun discussion. But let's see if we agree with those reviews. So this film, In the Beginning, was written by series creator J. Michael Straczynski, and it was directed by Michael Behar. In the Beginning is actually a prequel film that's set in the future, but tells a story about a time before the show actually took place, despite the fact that it was released between seasons 4 and 5. And I found out why that was a little bit as I was doing a little bit of research preparing for this. It turns out that when the series was going to move from network television to TNT offered them the opportunity to do something for the service, and so for the cable channel. And what they wanted to do, J. Michael Straczynski specifically, they wanted to do a prequel because he wanted to fill in some of the gaps and some of the things that they had only alluded to throughout the course of the show. So In the Beginning is what they came up with. This is a film that is narrated by probably one of my favorite characters in the series, Lando Malari. And at this point in time, he is the emperor of the Centauri Republic, and he recounts the events of the war that took place between the Minbari and the humans. And he's doing this to 2 children who happen upon him while he's in his palace. And this film does a very good job of showing how a misunderstanding between the humans and the Minbari led to this brutal war that lasted for 2 years, and how there were folks on both sides that tried to stop it. It just got out of hand. And what we get are, some secrets about the origins of Sinclair, who is one of the commanders of the Babylon 5 station the first season. We also get to find out how Commander Sheridan became so feared by the Minbari based on something he did during the course of the war, and getting to see Delen's part in the war as well as Lando. So it was a lot of fun revisiting some of these characters and seeing them in a different light, in a different position, especially at this point in time where we had already been with them for 4 seasons. So getting to see them, way back when, before that ever happened, was pretty interesting. So this film is very well made and pretty engaging on its own. I just thought that the performances, especially because of Lando Malari's performance being played by Peter Jurasik, was just a cut above. He's always fantastic. But let's get a little bit more into the review. We'll dig into that. So what this film does is it explores this period of time, and it's a gripping movie. You get to see how ignorance and fear and just kind of override everyone's sense of intelligence. And there's a little bit of arrogance, a significant amount of arrogance in there that causes just this war. You get to see a lot more of the complexity of Lando Malari, and he's telling the story of how this happened, this pivotal event in history that had the possibility to just wipe out the entire galaxy, not just humans, based on some of the things that you learn during the course of the war. We also get to learn how this happened basically because of a tragic mistake, and how this escalated into a genocidal campaign against humanity. And what this movie does a good job of showing just the pain of war. We get to see soldiers on the battlefield. We get to see loss on both sides. And so it does a good job of showing the tragedy of war. And, there are some standout performances in this. I've already called out Delenn. I think she does a great job of showing just a younger version of herself. And, some of the things that she did that either, furthered this war or when she tried to pull it back. I still think that, again, Peter Jurasik as Lando is he's the GOAT. Getting to see him play two different versions of himself, at different ages, was a lot of fun. You get to see someone who's just at the beginning of his relationship with humans, and then someone who has gotten everything that they ever wished for, but it just turned out not to be what they wanted. His performance in this, his narration in this really sells this. There's a speech that he gives, or a soliloquy, where he's talking about just the bravery that he saw in humans in the face of just absolute destruction. There wasn't much that the humans could do to fight the Minbari, so what he observed in just throwing themselves at the Minbari ships and at the Minbari weapons. There's a line where he talks about the fact that when the humans ran out of ships, they used guns. When they ran out of guns, they used blades. When they didn't have any blades, they used their hands. And he just goes on. There's a part where he says, I hope that when I meet my maker, that I have half as much dignity as I saw in their eyes. And it's such a good line. And when we talk about a reboot of Babylon 5 and recasting characters like Shakar and Lando, I worry about moments like this, because he just delivers it so well, and you're just fully in those moments as it's happening, because it's juxtaposed to just humans getting slaughtered. But it's done very, very well, sadly. But yeah, the performances are really good. I talked about the fact that this had been nominated for an Emmy Award based on the special effects, on the visual effects. Listen, I'll tell you this. They might have been good at the time. I don't know, right? I do recall probably thinking that they look like PlayStation 1 graphics. That's probably the easiest thing that I compare it to. If you ever played any RTS games like StarCraft or Command and Conquer, and you zoom in like all the way, that's kind of what some of this look like. All of it doesn't look like that, but there are moments where you see these things happen, especially towards the beginning. It just takes you completely out of it. And it makes me wonder, if this was the thing that got nominated for an Emmy at the time, what did everything else look like? I don't know. But anyway, that said, I think the other question that has to be asked with all of these things is, given that it's a prequel, but it's also something that's, been released significantly after the series has begun, who is this for? I think for fans of the series, this is an easy watch. If somehow you missed this film when it originally came out, it is easy to say that this film will enrich the lore and will probably deepen your appreciation for the series. I think is it a good introduction for newcomers? That's hard to say. Part of that is because I think a lot of my enjoyment of this film is couched in A, nostalgia, but also B, knowing what's going to come or what has already happened, given what I had seen having watched seasons 1 through 4. So it's hard for me to separate the two. I don't know. That would actually be a good experiment to have someone who has never watched it, watch this one, and then watch the entirety of the series. It's a lot of hours to dedicate, but I'm really curious if anyone has ever done that. But I think that this is just a very good story. It's one of those things, like it's almost like the Clone Wars in Star Wars, where, you know, up until a point we'd heard about the Clone Wars and we'd read about the Clone Wars, but we never got to see it. And so this is the equivalent of that. Like throughout the course of this series, the Earth Minbari War is a thing that comes up and gets referenced quite a bit. But here we finally get to see it, and it's pretty good. So at least from that perspective, fans who have seen all of the show would definitely enjoy getting to see this. But I think anybody that loves sci-fi should definitely take a look at this. So yeah, I'm really curious. If you've never seen this, go ahead and take a look. This isn't me saying that it's good for you as someone who has never seen the show, but I'm actually just curious. What do you think? Is it something that you've seen that would pique your interest? As someone who's already a fan of the show, it's probably one of my, if not my favorite film out of all of it. But I'd love to hear what you think. So go ahead, do all the socials, like, rate, comment, subscribe, share. We would definitely appreciate it. Also, you know, if you're interested in this kind of content or more, go ahead and do that as well. Drop a comment, and we might end up covering the road home for the show. So, other than that, we will catch you on the next time. Hasta lasagna. Don't get any on ya.